Jordan Westburg's incredible 2024 season continued this weekend as his walk-off hit in the 11th on Saturday helped the Orioles to a series win over the Diamondbacks. And I'll recap all three games of the series coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Fans, today is Monday, May 13th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we are going to recap the Orioles' series win over the Diamondbacks from the weekend, as the O's took 2 out of 3 from Arizona in Baltimore on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'll talk about the 4-2 win on Friday. We'll talk about the big-time 5-4 walk-off win in 11 innings on Saturday, and of course, we'll get to the 9-2 loss on Sunday and talk about all the key moments from the series. And that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedonmlb and use code all lowercase LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. So it's a series win for the Orioles, taking 2 of 3 from the Arizona Diamondbacks. And even though they couldn't complete the sweep, lost on Sunday, they still do sit in first place in the American League East. They've got right now a half-game lead over the Yankees, and the Orioles 26-13 through 39 games on the season. And I'm going to recap the weekend. Let's go back to Friday to kick things off. A 4-2 win for the O's over the D-backs on Apple TV Plus in the City Connect uniforms to take game 1 of the series. I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from Friday's victory. And the first thing you need to know is Cole Irvin, unfortunately, had a scoreless streak end. But he still pitched well for the Orioles and pitched well enough where I'm saying you can't take this guy out of the rotation right now. Irvin, 5 2/3 innings in the start on Friday night. He allowed 2 runs on 5 hits with 6 strikeouts, 1 walk, and a home run allowed to the D-backs offense. Through 95 pitches, Arizona got him for 8 hard hit balls, and his ERA is now at 2.90 on the season. Now, we know Irvin came into that start with the incredible scoreless streak, 21 consecutive innings over his last 3 starts. He went the first 2 innings scoreless, and then he lost it in the third. Ketel Marte got him for a solo homer that made it a 2-1 game at the time. And Irvin ended up, after he came out of the game, one of his inherited runners scored in the 6th. That was the second earned run. But otherwise, he was pretty good. Again, now it was a different approach for Irvin on Friday night than it's been over the last 3 starts. Last 3 starts, Irvin has just been heavy curveballs. I mean, it's been his number 1 pitch. His last start, he threw his most curveballs ever in a single start. And yeah, the D-backs offense is maybe a little bit different, but they loaded it up with righties against Irvin, and that curveball's kind of been the great equalizer against right-handed hitters for him this year. But there was something in probably how a lot of the D-backs righties hit breaking balls that had the Orioles go to a fastball heavy approach. It could have also been a little bit of, maybe Irvin didn't have the best feel for his curveball on Friday night, but it's not like he went completely away from it. I mean, it was still his second most used pitch with 20 of them out of 95 pitches, but 37 four-seam fastballs. That was very heavy four-seam fastballs usage for Cole Irvin. Basically sat 92, did touch that 94 to 95 a couple of times, which was cool to see, but we know at 92, that's where he needs to be most effective. It was 11 whiffs. He got some on the changeup. He got some on the fastball. But he just had that four-seam fastball literally going wherever he wanted to. Again, 37 four-seam fastballs. He got 8 foul balls. He got 9 called strikes. He got 5 swings and misses. 73% of the four-seamers he threw were in the strike zone. That is just kind of absurd command. Now, it's a four-seam fastball. It's most pitchers would say probably their easiest pitch to command, especially when you're only throwing 92. But it was pretty pinpoint for Cole Irvin. And yeah, maybe he didn't have his best curveball, but the pinpoint fastball helped him get through 5 2/3 innings. Wasn't as efficient as he has been, right? Through 95 pitches, couldn't get through the 6th, but still a really good start for Irvin and for the Orioles. Second thing you need to know from Friday night's win is that Craig Kimbrell, for the first time, was not in the closer role officially not in the closer role for the Orioles. We saw things kind of fully break down with the blown save Wednesday night in DC. The Orioles had the off day Thursday. Brandon Hyde said to the media after the game Wednesday, hey, he's still our closer. Of course, that's what he's going to say. 30 minutes after a crazy game like that, he's going to back his players to the media. And Craig Kimbrell talked to the media on Friday before the game and said, I expect to have this role. If I'm given the ball, I just need to be better. But Craig Kimbrell seemingly handled this like a pro, and so did Brandon Hyde. He handled it all in-house. He never made a statement to the media. He didn't even make a statement like after Friday's game, like, hey, Craig Kimbrell is no longer our closer. He just talked about how he felt like that was a good spot to get him in there and get him back to what he needs to do and knowing he can be potentially their best reliever down the line. Hyde seemingly handled this perfectly. Kimbrell took it perfectly. He's a true pro at 35. That is the kind of stuff that makes Brandon Hyde such a good manager of this Orioles team. It's not just knowing when to pull Kimbrell from that role and put him in the seventh, where in a one-run game, he gave the Orioles a 1-2-3 seventh inning. Even without being the closer, he was a big part of them winning that game on Friday night. But the other thing was how he handled it in the clubhouse. The things that fans can't see behind the scenes, clearly that went over well, because not only did it not blow up publicly, but Kimbrell bought into that role and threw a 1-2-3 inning. We've seen Craig Kimbrell in the past kind of struggle when he hasn't been in the ninth inning, even really years before he was with Baltimore. This looked good for Kimbrell. It was the right move for the team at the time. Again, I still think at some point Craig Kimbrell will be back in the ninth inning for the Orioles, but he needs to earn his way back there. Friday night was a good start. 1-2-3 inning with a strikeout in a one-run game. It was still high leverage, right? I saw people say, oh, good, he's not in high leverage. A one-run lead in the seventh is a high leverage spot, and he went 1-2-3. That was really good to see. Third thing you need to know from the Orioles 4-2 win over the D-backs on Friday night is that the rest of the Oriole bullpen was pretty good as well in also slightly different roles. We saw Albert Suarez as the first guy out of the pen replacing Cole Irvin, came on with the 2-on and 2 outs in the sixth, trying to protect that 3-1 lead. He did give up an RBI single, run charge to Irvin, made it 3-2, but then got a fly out to get out of the sixth inning with the Orioles in the lead. And that was it. Albert Suarez, who had been a starter and then a long reliever, faced only 2 batters in the game on Friday night. He's going to be bouncing around to every single bullpen role you could possibly imagine. I mentioned Kimbrell in the seventh, and then they used kind of the Jacob Webb, CNL Perez matchup combo to throw a scoreless eighth. And then, as I thought would get probably the majority of the ninth inning, not necessarily be the closer, but it was Yennier Cano who got the save chance with a 4-2 lead in the ninth inning. Leadoff runner got on, but then he kind of bared down, made another nice defensive play. He's made many of them this year and got the 3 outs he needed for the save. And you like to see that. Hey, Orioles bullpen getting shuffled around. Kimbrell not in the ninth. They still do a good job of 3 1/3, no earned runs, locking down the victory for the Orioles. And the fourth thing you need to know from that Friday night win is that the Orioles won the game on offense, really without hitting for any power. That's been the Orioles' big calling card this year, major league leaders in home runs as a team. But they did not hit a home run for their 4 runs on Friday night. In fact, they only had 2 extra base hits in the game, and they were both doubles. Instead, everyone kind of contributed in this game. 7 of the 9 starters each had 1 hit. That was all 7 hits for the Orioles. Colton Cowser had an offer, but did have a walk. And Cedric Mullins had an offer, but he had an RBI ground out that brought in the second run and made it 2-0 in the second inning. So really, all 9 starters contributed in the offense without providing like a whole lot of power. And now, to be fair, like those doubles that they hit, the 2 of them still certainly did help the Orioles. So it's not like they just, tiny little cuts against the Diamondbacks with a bunch of singles. You had Jordan Westburg with an RBI double. You had Gunnar Henderson in the 7th with an RBI double, which was a big insurance run. But the Orioles still got some big hits that weren't necessarily homers, and it shows you they can win offensively in different ways. And a guy who has been helping the O's win in different ways is Ryan O'Hearn. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles 4-2 win to open the series on Friday is that Ryan O'Hearn just continues to be special. It hasn't been the biggest power output, right? It's been a nice 5-homer season so far, but it's everything else he is doing. Had an RBI single in the 5th, nice little insurance run that put the Orioles up 3-1, had 2 hard hit balls in the game, also drew 2 walks in this one without striking out. And now on the season, Ryan O'Hearn, 13 walks to just 9 strikeouts. This was the one thing, despite the great year and the great batted ball profile, that O'Hearn did not do in that breakout 2023 season. He didn't walk at all. He had like a 4% walk rate. His walk rate has tripled to this point. It's above 13%. And his strikeout rate wasn't really an issue last year, but he's dropped it even further. He struck out 9 times this season. And I get he doesn't play every day, right? He's not in the lineup against lefties, but he's in the lineup most days against right-handed pitching, and only have 9 strikeouts is absurd. The way he's covering the plate, and to do that along with how hard he's hitting the ball and his quality of contact is through the roof. Ryan O'Hearn is the number 3 hitter for the Baltimore Orioles right now, who are in first place in the AL East. It's been over a year. It's been a year of this basically, and it's still kind of crazy to say. And he continues to produce in that lineup for the O's. And they do win it, open the series with a 4-2 win on Friday, continue that sweepless streak. And then it was on to Saturday. The Orioles were looking to clinch up that series win in the 4:00 start on Saturday. And it looked like at times the O's weren't going to be able to do that, but a little late inning magic from the Orioles helped them walk it off with the win on Saturday. And coming up next, I'll tell you how they did it. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. We know it can be tough to talk about life insurance, but Policygenius, they really make it easy, and they make the choices right there for you. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it, help you think about what option is best for you, and help you make that right decision. Because some places may not offer the protection your family needs. Policygenius will do it for you. So check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. So the Orioles picked up the big win over the Diamondbacks on Friday night and then turned their attention to Saturday as they were looking to clinch the series win. And it was a crazy game, but they did just that with a 5-4 walk-off victory in 11 innings on Saturday to clinch the series. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that Saturday win. And the first thing you need to know is Jordan Westburg had himself an absolute day. His first career 4-hit game ended with some more heroics. Walk-off single for Westburg on the first pitch of the bottom of the 11th inning brought home Colton Cowser for the 5-4 win. Second walk-off hit of the season for Westburg, although they've both been a little bit different. The first one was a walk-off homer against the Royals. This one, 67 miles per hour off the end of his bat, just looping down the first baseline on a first pitch breaking ball with, of course, Cowser, the zombie runner, on second in a tie game to open up the 11th. And it fell just inside the line for a base hit. Cowser got a late jump because he thought the ball was going to be caught, but he was able to score and beat the throw at home. What a cool moment. I mean, Westburg and Mateo dancing out there beyond first base after the walk-off. Awesome for Westburg. But that seemed to be really the only ball he didn't square up in this game, as Westburg went 4 for 5. He had an RBI double to kick off the scoring in the second, hit it 109 off the bat. He had a single in the 4th inning, hit it 106 off the bat. He did fly out in the 6th, but then he singled in the 9th, tried to rally the Orioles a little bit and did steal second. And the Orioles almost walked off there. Adley hit a good ball to right field with 2 outs, just unfortunately right to the glove of Jake McCarthy. That was 99 off the bat for Westburg. And then, of course, the walk-off single in the 11th. Westburg has been great this year. I still feel like he's not getting enough credit. It was Rich Waltz and Ryan Spielborgs who were on the call for Apple TV Plus on Friday night, and they had a conversation about how Westburg is just one of the young stars of this team, but is just maybe not getting the kind of love he deserves. I mean, Westburg had a double in all 3 games this weekend. He's now hitting .304 with an .885 OPS on the season, and he's hitting like 6th or 7th every day in the Orioles order. Like, it seems like on half the teams in baseball, Jordan Westburg would be hitting 2nd right now, but he's hitting 6th or 7th. And a lot of that's because the Orioles have so much production up and down their lineup, but he's just been so good. Great defensively at third base and second base. Has just been an awesome kind of under the radar season a little bit for Jordan Westburg. Second thing you need to know from that Orioles crazy win on Saturday is that after kind of dinking and dunking their way offensively on Friday, the O's power was certainly on display on Saturday. Now, they only scored 5 runs, and it took them 11 innings to do so, but they got a big-time extra base. Ryan Mountcastle, 3-5, 2 doubles and a triple in this game. Somehow he hit 2 doubles and a triple and did not drive in a run. I believe that every time he had the extra base hit, there was no one on base, so just kind of tough sequencing and timing for Mountcastle, but he swung it well. Gunnar Henderson tied the league lead with his 12th home run in this game, hit a solo homer in the 5th, 107 off the bat, 411 feet for the 12th of the year for Gunnar. And then Anthony Santander probably had the biggest clutch swing of this one. The Orioles offense was seemingly going away against the D-backs bullpen. Arizona was clinging to a 4-3 lead. And Anthony Santander gets a changeup from Kevin Ginkel, one of the better relievers in baseball, became a star, helping to lead the D-backs to the World Series last year. Throws a changeup off the plate. Like, it was not just a borderline pitch, it was clearly a ball. If Santander takes it, it is easily ball 1. Instead, he goes after it, and somehow, not only does he hit it hard, it's not like he takes it the other way on a pitch off the plate. He drives it to straightaway center field, a line drive homer for Santander, 102 off the bat, 410 feet to tie the game 4-4 in the bottom of the 8th inning. Probably the biggest swing of any Orioles hitter this weekend. And we've seen Santander do it in the past. He's a great low ball hitter. That walk-off homer he hit against the Yankees last year, took that pitch off the dirt. Remember last season, he had that 2-homer game against the Blue Jays at Camden Yards where both homers were pitches that were like 5 feet low, it seemed. Santander has hit high balls out of the yard. He is, and I know he's been struggling a bit through 6 weeks of this season. It's no doubt about it. He has not been the same Anthony Santander, but he is, bar none, the best bad ball hitter on this team. Like, if you need someone to do damage on a pitch outside the strike zone, Anthony Santander is your guy, and he continues to do that for the Orioles. And the Orioles just even hit the ball hard in this game. Like, the D-backs had their worst starter starting Ryan Nelson. He was lucky to only give up 3 runs in this one. But the Orioles hit the ball. I mean, even Colton Cowser, who only had 1 hit in this game and didn't have an extra base hit, like, he had 3 hard hit balls. Ryan Mountcastle had 3 hard hit balls. Jordan Westburg had 3 hard hit balls. Gunnar had 2. Ryan O'Hearn had 2. Like, the Orioles still hit the ball hard in this game and showed what has made their offense so good this season. Third thing you need to know from the Orioles' 5-4 win over the D-backs on Saturday is that John Means was just not the same as he was in his first start. We know how great he was coming off the injured list. 7 scoreless innings in Cincinnati last weekend for his first start of the year. His second one, not too much. He struggled in this game. 4 2/3 innings for Means. He allowed 4 runs on 6 hits. Now, he didn't walk anybody, but he only had 3 strikeouts. He did give up a home run, and the D-backs got him for 11 hard hit balls in 4 2/3 innings. It was kind of an interesting pitch mix. We saw Means throw more changeups than fastballs last week in Cincinnati. This time he was pretty heavy on the fastball, and Means can locate well, right? Like, he didn't walk anybody. He's always in the strike zone. But his fastball is fairly hittable. I mean, it was 91. He topped out at 93 once, but he was basically 90 to 91. It doesn't have like incredible induced vertical break. It doesn't have that big time rise ball effect. It's not the greatest fastball in the world. It's just command is the name of the game for Means. He didn't have the pinpoint command of the fastball. It was good enough to throw it 42 times out of 89 pitches. It was surprising to only see 23 changeups out of him, especially because the D-backs once again kind of loaded the lineup with right-handed hitters against the lefty Means, and he usually attacks the righties with that changeup. But I have a feeling that he just didn't have the feel for his change. I mean, only 2 whiffs on 14 swings against his changeup. He'll generally do much better than that. It was in the strike zone, but he left it over the middle of the plate like far too often in this game. I just feel like Means did not have his best stuff. You know, he almost gave up the homer to Blaze Alexander. Then he did give up the homer to Ketel Marte in that 3rd inning. Then he got into a lot of trouble in the 5th and loaded the bases and, you know, had an inherited runner score after he left the game. Just not his best stuff. And I'm not going to go too low on Means after this one, especially after how good he was in that first start. He'll be somewhere in between these 2 starts, hopefully throughout the rest of the season for the Orioles. And you will take that. That will be a solid member of your rotation. But I think the issue might have just been the changeup is his best pitch. He didn't have great feel for it. So you got to go to the other ones. And they're also, you know, seem to be a little bit off the baseball field that Means was kind of dealing with in his life that can certainly impact players. And that's something else that you kind of always have to think about. So obviously wishing the best to the Means family as well. But Fourth thing you need to know from the Orioles win on Saturday is that I just got to give a shout out to Mike Baumann. I mean, he's been bad this year. Ryan McKenna's gotten a lot of heat from me, but I don't think anyone on the Orioles has gotten more heat from me on this podcast than Mike Baumann, and for good reason. The Orioles don't really trust him. He's barely been used. When he has been used, he has cost the Orioles some games and has not been good out of the bullpen. He hadn't pitched since last Sunday in Cincinnati when he was kind of a disaster in the ninth inning of an 11-0 game. But Mike Baumann was kind of the under-the-radar reason why the Orioles were able to come back and win this game on Saturday. He came out of the pen and replaced John Means in the fifth inning. Now, he did allow a hit that allowed the fourth run to score and put the D-backs up 4-2 in the fifth. But then he just settled down and retired 7 straight batters. Only 2 hard hit balls, no walks, no strikeouts for Baumann, but he was really efficient. Only took him 22 pitches to get 7 outs, which was huge. And he kept the Orioles in this game. He kind of bridged it from the 5th all the way to the 8th, which was awesome for the O's pen. He allowed Gunnar to hit that homer, and then eventually Santander hits that homer to tie the game. I still didn't think it was like dominance from Baumann. Again, he got 1 whiff on 11 swings. He didn't get any strikeouts. It was mostly balls in play. He was pitching to contact, but it was his best outing of the year, and it worked better than anything else he's tried so far this season. So maybe not hunt the whiffs as much, go for contact more, and maybe it can work out like that. I still think Bauman's on the chopping block, and if Grayson Rodriguez does come back, maybe end of this week, early next week, Baumann would seemingly be the easiest move to make, to DFA him to make room for Rodriguez. But outings like this will certainly help him try to hold on to that roster spot. And you got to shout out to Baumann again, because Means had to come out in the 5th inning, and because the night before Irvin had to come out in the 6th inning, he bridged the gap between kind of the middle of the game and the back end guys while keeping the O's in it. And that was huge for 2 reasons. 1, getting 7 scoreless outs out of the pen is always awesome. But 2, this game ended up going to 11 innings. So the Orioles needed a lot of their bullpen. If Baumann, even if he only gave you like 1 good inning and then came out, you might not win that game. Or if he came out and just kind of stunk, you also don't win that game. So Baumann, those 7 outs was a huge part of the Orioles winning that game. So, I will talk about it when he's bad, but I will shout him out when he is good as well. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 5-4 walk-off win in 11 innings over the D-backs on Saturday is that the rest of the Orioles bullpen performed just as well. Now, Baumann was good, but everybody that came after him was good as well. Keegan Aiken with a scoreless 8th. Gunnar Henderson made a great play at shortstop to end that inning. Yennier Cano with a scoreless 9th to keep the game tied at 4. Unfortunately, the Orioles couldn't walk it off in the bottom of the 9th. Danny Coulombe getting some ground balls for a scoreless top of the 10th, even with the zombie runner on second. The Orioles then loaded the bases with 1 out in the bottom of the 10th. You thought, okay, you get the 0 and extras. That's the thing, right? If you get the 0 in the top of the 10th, you're feeling like, oh, we're going to win this game. And the Orioles loaded the bases with 1 out with Colton Cowser. And unfortunately, he grounded into an inning-ending double play that got it to the 11th. And then the O's went to Craig Kimbrell in the top of the 11th. And you're like, oh no, he did have a good outing last night, but is he going to be able to do it again? And sure enough, he did. Fly out to center, move the runner to third with 1 out. Then he hits Christian Walker, but then Kimbrell bears down, strikes out Jake McCarthy looking, and gets Eugenio Suarez to ground out to short to end the inning to put up the 0 despite the runner on second. Back-to-back huge outings for Kimbrell. I was scared, not because he had been so bad lately, but because I was like, I don't want him pitching on back-to-back days, but the O's kind of had to when they got to the 11th inning, and he got some big outs for the O's, and that handed it over to the offense for Jordan Westburg on that first pitch of the 11th to hit the walk-off single to win the game and to clinch the series for the O's on Saturday. So then they turned their attention to Sunday and said, you know what? What if we just swept the D-backs? Unfortunately, the good vibes kind of ran out on Sunday. The Orioles were smoked on Sunday. Still great to win 2 out of 3. Couldn't get the sweep. I'll tell you why coming up after this. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Prize Picks. I've mentioned Prize Picks already, but this is really the most enjoyable way to play daily fantasy sports. You don't want to miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your Prize Picks entries, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, or first inning runs. You just take your pick of more or less. That's it. You get a stat like Gunnar Henderson, Total bases, more or less than 2.5 tonight against the Blue Jays. You take more, he hits a homer, you win more. That's all. You can win up to 100 times your money at Prize Picks as well with the NBA playoffs. They got the more or less for all the stats there. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONMLB and you'll get a first deposit match up to $100 at Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. So the Orioles won the series over the weekend, taking the games on Friday and on Saturday, but unfortunately not able to take the win on Sunday as they fell 9-2 to the D-backs in the series finale. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that Sunday loss. And the first thing you need to know is it was kind of a weird up and down outing for Dean Kremer, who had been really good lately, but just an odd final line for Kremer's start on Sunday. 5 2/3 innings. He allows 6 runs, but only 3 earned on 4 hits. He strikes out 10 to tie a season high, but also walks 4, allows a homer, throws 100 pitches, and gives up only 6 hard hit balls. I have analyzed pretty much every start, all 39 starts by Orioles starting pitchers so far this season. I have never been at a loss more than I am with this Dean Kremer start. I honestly don't have much to take away from this thing. Like, he threw a lot of fastballs, the cutter, the sinker, the four-seamer. That's kind of usual for Kremer. 10 strikeouts is awesome, but he didn't do it with a lot of swing and miss. It was a good amount of called strikes, and then, maybe he'd get a swing and miss on strike 3, but it wasn't like he was filthy, like only 11 whiffs on 40 swings. His splitter was okay, but he only threw it 8 times. He also walked 4 batters in less than 6 innings. Like, you don't want to do that. He allowed a home run to Jake McCarthy, who hit his first home run of the year when he parked one onto the flag court in the 6th inning. That's kind of all I got. Like, I try to give you all as much analysis as I can. I just think this is a weird one from Dean Kremer. Like, he wasn't bad. 10 strikeouts, 5 2/3, 3 earned runs. Like, no. He wasn't good, though. Like, 4 walks, and no, 6 runs total. That's not good. Just a weird one. Just a very, very weird one. But the second thing you need to know from the game is that contributing to the weird one is that the defense behind Dean and frankly behind the Orioles pitching staff just did not help them out on Sunday. Dean could have gotten out of that 5th inning when he ended up giving up 2 runs. He kind of lost his command. He loaded the bases with 1 out. He was facing Corbin Carroll, and he got Carroll to hit a ground ball to Ramon Arias, who was drawn in at 3rd base. If Arias makes a good throw home, at the very least, they get the force out at home. There's 2 outs, and the next batter, Ketel Marte, who flew out, that would have ended the inning, and it's still just a 1-0 game. Instead, Arias makes a bad throw. McCann tries to stretch. He does catch it, but his foot comes off the plate. The run scores. They don't get any outs. The next batter is Marte. He does hit a fly ball, but instead of it being the final out, it ends up being a sac fly that makes it 3-0, and Dean did get out of that 5th, but then he comes out there in the 6th, and he gives up the 2-run homer, and just kind of didn't work out for him, and then he allows another base runner on a walk and comes out of the game. And then later in that 6th inning, Anthony Santander makes a pretty good throw to the plate that should throw a runner out to end the inning, and it just skips by James McCann. He can't catch it. 2-run score, some more runs score. Just kind of a bad defensive game. It's not like they made a crazy amount of errors or anything, just not the best work from the Orioles defense on Sunday, which is, it's been pretty good throughout the year. And Ramon Arias is in there for defense. You need him to make a better throw at 3rd base. He's not giving you much with the bat at this point. Third thing you need to know from that Sunday loss, kind of a mixed bag from the bullpen after that. Now, the lucky part was the Orioles only needed to use 2 relievers despite losing 9-2. That is always nice, especially when you don't have an off day coming up here on Monday. Ciano Perez came in the 6th inning, and he just did not have the goods. Gave up hit after hit, finally got a strikeout to get out of the inning, but he allowed all the inherited runners to score. He gave up 3 earned runs of his own, and that turned into a 6-run 6th inning for the D-backs, which basically just put this game completely out of reach, made it 9-1. Kind of his first blow-up outing of the year since coming back from the injured list. But on the flip side, the Orioles went to Albert Suarez to begin the 7th. They were trailing 9-2, and it just kind of mop-up duty for Suarez, who here been his relief outing so far. Mop-up duty while leading in Cincinnati, gives him 2 1/3 scoreless. Then the 10th and 11th innings in super high leverage in DC. Good 10th, blows the save in the 11th. Then he gets 1 out in a close game in the 6th inning on Friday, and then 3 scoreless innings of mop-up duty while you're losing, went 7th, 8th, and 9th on Sunday. 1 hit, 3 Ks, no walks. You like what you see there from Albert Suarez. You're not going to take too much from a 9-2 game, especially when you only got 3 whiffs on 20 swings. It was just a lot of soft contact, basically. However, he saved the bullpen. Clear as day. Orioles already didn't have Cano or Kimbrel available in this game. They could have emptied out more of the pen. They don't have an off day today. The Blue Jays come right into town. And Suarez, who won't be available Monday because he just threw 3 innings, really saved the bullpen. And that was kind of a huge positive despite the loss for the O's Sunday. Now, the fourth thing you need to know from that Sunday loss is that just not much offense in this game. Jordan Westburg, another RBI double. Ho-hum, did it in the 5th inning to get the Orioles on the board after Anthony Santander's leadoff double broke up the no-hitter in the 5th. And Adley Rutschman hit a solo home run in the 6th from the left side after the game was kind of over. Otherwise, nothing from the O's offense. Zach Gallen wasn't dominant, but he was pretty good. 4 no-hit innings, giving up 2 runs over 6. D-backs bullpen pitched well. Orioles only had 6 hard hit balls in this entire game. Just kind of an off day for the Orioles offense, and that's how it can be sometimes in a long season. And the 5th and final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 9-2 loss to the D-backs on Sunday is that Colton Cowser started in center field again, which was interesting to see. Cedric Mullins, who had been struggling, is 2 for 24 in the month of May, gets the day off Saturday. Colton Cowser starts in center field. Now, he played a little center last year, but hasn't played much of it yet this season. I'm not a huge believer in Colton Cowser's abilities defensively in center field. I think he could be fine out there, but I don't think he's like a plus defender in center, and I don't think he's anything close to what Mullins is out there, and it worries me a little bit. He looked shaky defensively in center field last year, but he started back-to-back games, Saturday and Sunday in center. Mullins got both days off because he has been struggling, and he looked fine. That did push the Orioles into starting Heston Kjerstad in left field on Saturday. Now, it was nice for Kjerstad to get a start, but you'd rather not Kjerstad play in the large left field at Camden Yards. The Orioles only did it 6 times all of last year, where they had kind of a non-good defender play field at Camden Yards. It went okay. Like, he struggled to get a couple of balls off the wall, but he also made a couple of nice catches, made a really, really good sliding catch in left field. So kind of a mixed bag for Heston Kjerstad. I think you like to see what you saw in general, but he's not going to be playing out there a lot, especially now that Austin Hayes should be back this week. But Mullins is slumping, and he'll break out of it. Mullins has slumped before. As we know, for Cedric Mullins specifically, his slumps really look worse than the slumps of any other hitter for the Orioles. It's kind of tough to watch when he's down, but when he's up, he's a big-time producer, and he's a Gold Glove caliber center fielder. So at worst, if he's your guy that's not hitting, you can still start him in center field and bat him 9th, and he's still giving you positive value to your team. Now, if you have multiple other players that aren't hitting, it becomes tough. But if Mullins is like the only guy or one of 2, then you're generally okay, and that's what's going to happen. But we could see, especially because he just hasn't been able to hit lefties at all this year, maybe he will start to sit against some lefties. Now, these were both righty pitchers this weekend he sat against. This was most about just him getting a break. He's been really struggling. But if he sits against lefties, you could see Cowser in center with Austin Hayes in left. Maybe a little Kjerstad in left. Maybe Hayes plays a little center field to give him a day off. Maybe you see a little more Jorge Mateo in center field. Maybe once Jackson Holiday comes back to the bigs, or potentially Kobe Mayo would come up here. There are a lot of combinations. Mullins is still going to play. Mullins is going to break out of this offensively. He's too good of a player, but it's good to know that his baseline is elite defensive center fielder, and you still want that out there most days. Even if he's not hitting, he helps your team win defensively in center field. But that'll do it for today's episode. Orioles take the series over the D-backs 2 out of 3, 26-13. They are sitting in first place in the AL East. And next up comes a team that is really struggling in the AL East right now. It is the Toronto Blue Jays, 18-22 on the year. They just lost 2 out of 3 at home against the Twins. They have not been very good so far this season, to put it lightly. And they come to Camden Yards, Jays and O's, for the first time this season. The series starts tonight, 6:35 p.m. Eastern time start for game 1 of 3. Jose Barrios will take the mound for the Blue Jays. He's been great this season. He has not been one of their issues. The 29-year-old righty has a 2.85 ERA in 8 starts. However, he was awful his last time out. Gave up 8 runs in 3 2/3 innings against the Phillies in his last start. You know, the O's would love to do that to him again, and the O's will send their ace to the hill. Corbin Burns takes the mound tonight. Orioles have been shut out in each of Corbin Burns' last 2 starts, the only 2 shutout losses for the Orioles this season. Let's hope they can score some runs for Burns in game 1 tonight. And then I'll be back with you tomorrow for a Tuesday episode recapping everything you need to know from Monday night's game 1 between the O's and the Jays. Until then, make sure to leave a 5-star rating and a review wherever you listen to the pod. Of course, always like, comment, and subscribe to the Locked On Orioles podcast on YouTube. And I will be back tomorrow for a Tuesday episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.